So today I'm going to be talking to you about my research on animal-assisted intervention for children with autism and their peers in the classroom. So within HAI, I'm sure all of you are familiar, there have been a number of proposed benefits for humans interacting with animals. Now, the area that I'm particularly interested in is social functioning. So that would be the direct benefits of interacting with the animal for social behaviors within the individual, as well as the connections that animals create between other people, so the social lubrication effect. The population that I'm working with are children with autism, and these individuals, the core impairment is in social functioning, so in their interactions with other people. The idea behind my program is to see if these interactions with animals can be beneficial to them. A number of studies have started to show that although they show impairments in interacting with humans, they tend to seek out and enjoy interacting with animals. So might we be able to present an intervention that would build upon this to teach them how to interact with other people and connect them to the people around them. So this isn't the first study to look at animal-assisted intervention for autism. There have been others, so I decided to put together a little table to show you where our study fits in with this previous research. I've selected the 4 studies that had the largest sample sizes as a comparison. These range between 22 and 42 participants. In our study, we wanted to build upon this with a larger sample size, so we actually had 192 participants, 64 of which had autism. All of the previous published research on AAI for ASD has focused on children, including studies not in this table. Our study as well looked at children. There have been a variety of types of animals used, but in the studies with larger sample sizes, it's predominantly horses that have been used, although one study did use dogs, llamas, and rabbits. Can you hear me when I turn my head to the side? Okay. In our study, we wanted to try and use a new type of animal. Because we're working in the school classrooms, we looked at an animal that's traditionally a classroom pet, the guinea pig. In the other interventions, contact with the animal was limited to these sessions. So the children would come and interact with the animal once or twice a week for up to an hour. But what's novel about our study is that the guinea pigs lived in the school environment. So we didn't have to increase the number and duration of sessions in order to increase the amount of time the children had access to at least viewing the animal. In previous intervention studies, they've been predominantly one-on-one, so one interventionist, one child, and the animals. 2 of the studies here, which are the only 2 that I've seen in the publications I've looked at, did use a group design. So one had 19 kids per group, and one had 3. We also used a group design for 2 reasons. The first, we wanted to increase the efficiency of this design, so more children can receive the services at once. And the second is because we're looking at social functioning, we wanted to provide a forum for children to increase their interactions with their peers in the presence of the animal. In the other studies that used group designs, all of the participants had autism. So the 19 children in that BASS study all had autism and were all present for the intervention sessions. What differentiates our study is that we use typically developing children in the intervention groups. So we'd have 1 child with ASD as well as 2 typically developing peers. Again, a couple reasons for this. The first, we're looking at mainstream inclusion classrooms. Children with autism tend to be isolated from their peers. So we thought to bring these peers together in this setting might be a chance to reduce that isolation, as well as to provide ecological validity that they're in the classroom with their peers. Okay, so our study, our participants were children ages 5 to 12. And we selected these participants from within mainstream inclusion classrooms. So we would select the child with autism, and then randomly select 2 typically developing peers. If there's more than 1 child with autism, we'd select 2 additional typically developing peers for an additional group. So across 41 classrooms, we had 64 individuals with autism participating and 128 typically developing children for our total sample size of 192 participants. It might be hard to see at the bottom from the back, but I'll try and read it out as it comes. So the way we divided up this sample is that half of our participants were in the control group, so 96 participants in our wait list control group, so business as usual, no changes to their regular school environment. The other half of participants, the other 96, were in our AAI group. So this means they had the additional animal in their life for this time period. So we selected guinea pigs, and the way we set up the format of the intervention is that 2 guinea pigs lived in the school classroom for the duration of the intervention. And in addition to that, we held 16 sessions. Each lasted 20 minutes and occurred with the 3 participants shown here. And it's important to note that these weren't animal-assisted therapy sessions. These are animal-assisted activities. So we didn't have targeted therapeutic goals. It was focused on teaching the children how to care for and interact with the animals. So they would feed them, they would take pictures of them, create environmental enrichment activities, not therapeutic targeted goals. So the way we design this intervention, I just want to emphasize that we're looking at a waitlist control group. So we're studying the impact of this whole intervention package compared to their usual life. So we're not assessing, is this the animal that makes a difference? But if you present this program, will you see any differences compared to the normal school environment? So each condition lasted 8 weeks, and we took assessments both before and after. These assessments consisted of standardized assessment tools, including the Pervasive Developmental Disorder Behavior Inventory, or the PDDBI, which is focused towards children with autism, and the Social Skills Rating System, or the SSRS, which can be used with children with autism and typically developing children. And we selected these because they have excellent psychometric properties and have been widely used. Just a note on how we analyze the data. We did have a nested design, as you may have noticed. So we had our participants, which were nested within groups that received sessions together, which were nested within classrooms within schools. So we did do a nested design analysis. I'll start with our results for children with autism. So we had the PDDBI, and now the portion of this instrument that we use can be collapsed into social approach behaviors and social withdrawal behaviors. So what I'm going to show is these are on different scales. So I'm looking here at percent change. So for instance, if you see 0%, that means no change from pre to post test, whereas if it's a positive percent, it increased in that behavior from pre to post test, negative percent, it decreased. And I've separated the results into the control group and the AAI group, so 32 participants with ASD in each group. So an additional thing to note about the PDDBI is there's teacher version and parent version. Teachers rate behaviors at school, parents rate behaviors at home. So for the control group and social approach behaviors from pre to post test on the teacher version, we saw actually decreases in their social approach behaviors. In the AAI group, though, we saw increases in social approach behaviors, and that was a statistically significant difference. On the parent version, we don't really see any changes in the control group, but we do see increases in the AAI group, and again, that's significant, the difference. The magnitude appears to be different between the two. That may be because teachers are rating behaviors at school where the guinea pigs are, or that they put more effort into the intervention and expected more outcome. In terms of social withdrawal behaviors, the control group actually increased on this assessment, whereas the AAI group showed decreases in social withdrawal behaviors, and there were significant differences there. On the parent version, we see a similar pattern. Not much change in control group, but significant decreases on the parent version of social withdrawal behaviors. So this is kind of exciting because this is what we hypothesized to see, and it did demonstrate quite clearly on both of these tools. We also looked at the SSRS, which has social skills and problem behaviors. And what we saw on this instrument, the control group didn't really change in social skills, but the AAI group did. It significantly increased in their social skills. On the parent version, there's a similar pattern, which is statistically significant. In terms of problem behaviors, we didn't see significant changes between the two groups on the teacher version. And we did see changes on the parent version, but as you can see, the magnitude of these changes appears to be less than what we saw in terms of social skills and social behaviors. So it doesn't seem like parents and teachers are just rating everything as better. It seems to be quite targeted towards social functioning. Now, although this was geared towards individuals with autism, we were interested to see if there'd be any outcomes for the typically developing children. So we administered the SSRS to parents and teachers of these children. And for social skills, the control group didn't really change, but the AAI group did significantly increase, and there were significant differences between the groups in social skills. There weren't significant changes on the parent version. In terms of problem behaviors, there were significant differences between the group, and that AAI kids decreased more in problem behaviors, but again, the magnitude doesn't look very big in terms of the means. And there were significant differences on the parent version as well for less problem behaviors following the AAI. So we see a similar pattern with our typically developing participants, but it may not be to the same extent. So when we come back to this initial model that I showed in the beginning, what we've done is we've implemented an AAI with guinea pigs in the classroom. And remember, we're not studying whether it's the guinea pig, but we're studying whether this program made a difference, and it does appear to improve social functioning for the individuals with autism. We saw increases in social approach behaviors, decreases in social withdrawal behaviors, and increased social skills. And we also saw benefits for the typically developing children. We saw increased social skills and actually some decreases in problem behaviors. So these are exciting findings from our study of this program, but as with all studies, there are limitations. The first of which I've tried to mention a few times, that we weren't specifically looking at the animal, but at the whole picture. So the follow-up would clearly be to do a component analysis to find out which aspect of this intervention is driving these benefits. The second thing is we didn't assess any animal outcomes, so it was very human-focused, the design. Although we implemented as many measures or efforts as we could to increase the welfare of the animals and ensure that they had positive outcomes, we didn't assess this. So it would be important to team up with animal behaviorists to assess that in the follow-up. And the third limitation, which we're currently addressing, is our assessment of social functioning. We had parent and teachers as informants. And although these are robust, standardized assessment tools that we use, they are clearly subject to potential biases, expectancy biases from parents and teachers who knew about the intervention and may have wanted to see change and then rated change. So the way we're following this up is we're taking our survey-based measures and corroborating it with blind behavioral assessment. So we have video data that we currently have blind raters assessing for social behaviors to match up with what we saw on the survey data. We're also interested in this top line here. So although they're showing more social behaviors, is that actually translating into connections with their classmates and social networks? So what we've done is we've conducted social cognitive mapping to interview all the children and discover if any friendships have emerged post-intervention in the control group versus the AAI group. And finally, we have collected physiological data to find out if there are any changes in stress due to interacting with the animals. So in conclusion, from the study that I've showed, it does appear that our classroom-based AAI improves social functioning compared to a waitlist control group, both for children with autism and for the typically developing children. And I just wanted to say a very big thanks to all of the many organizations that made this possible, especially the Waltham Foundation. And if you're interested in finding out more about this study or our research, you can check out the website at humananimalinteractions.com.